We are ready whenever you are.
Okay. Start the meeting, call to order, roll call,
Mrs. Petropoulos,
here,
Mrs. Labudzik,
here,
Mrs. Lammel,
here,
Mrs. Grove,
here,
Mr. Medina,
Here.
Mrs. Schroeder,
here.
and Mrs. Birkin. Absent.
Okay, we're gonna do the pledge of allegiance. It's over there this time. Oh, it's behind us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so introduction of guests.
Yeah, we have
Quite a
packed
few.
house, which we don't usually have. So welcome, everybody. Want to especially give a shout out to our police department for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. And just because we do have more people than we normally do, we wanted to move public comment up to the beginning. If anyone in the public has anything that they would like to say this evening. Anybody? Okay. All right.
All right, so we are going to move to 2.0, donations to the district.
Yes, we are really excited. Ridge Central has been given a donation once again from Enchanted Backpack. It's $2,000 each year over the next 3 years, and it is really, they wrote the grant to incentivize the students with some of their different programs. So we're excited. Enchanted Backpack has been really, really kind to our district, and so we're excited to keep partnering with them.
I will make the motion.
I'll second it.
All right, I have Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Mrs. Lammel,
Aye.
Mr. Medina,
Aye.
Mrs. Labudzik,
Aye.
Mrs. Schroeder,
Aye.
and Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye. So 3.0, approval of the consent agenda. So it's the minutes of the January 9th meeting, open session, minutes of the January 9th meeting closed, and minutes of the January 23rd meeting study session.
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Mrs. Schroeder.
Aye.
Mrs. Labudzik,
Aye.
Mrs. Lammel,
Aye.
Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
and Mr. Medina.
4.0 is the superintendent's report.
All right, well, again, welcome everyone. It feels like a really long time since we've had a meeting. It's been like 3 full weeks since we had our last study session, and a lot has been going on. First, wanted to touch base with the PTA. They had their first big event of the year. They had the roller skating party, and I know we had at least this whole side of the board was there with their children that evening. The biggest problem was the line to get in was ridiculously long. It was not a problem we thought we'd have, but it worked out really well. I believe they had 258 paid attendees, and there were definitely a lot more than that. There's only like 12 people there who were not part of our school district. And I know Ridge Lawn had Eddie the Eagle out there skating, which drew a lot of people, and we had a really good administrative turnout from everyone. So I appreciated what they did. It went really, really well. The next big event that they have is next Friday is movie night. And that will be over at Finley will be, I believe, Trolls, and then over at Ridge Central will be the Mario movie. So that's usually a pretty good turnout. Been doing the food raisers. They just awarded the grants for our staff, so that was really nice. At your place, just we had talked about this before, are a list of upcoming events that we have. And then I just kind of have this sheet as like the official, if you know you're going to want to come, if you just want to put your name next to it so that we are aware. I'm going to pass that around. Also, just kind of things going around in the buildings. We celebrated the 100th day of school. Some of the pictures in there, I always like to see the people dress up as 100-year-olds. It's always very, very cute to see that. Just continuously going through the school improvement process with our team leaders and our teams. And then I wanted to point out in between, or right next to the chief there, is what we call the translation station. This is brand new in the last month in our district, and we cannot believe the success we've been having with it. Caroline, our EL director, had come and said we would like to pilot this. We piloted it for about 2 days and then decided we need this in all of our buildings. So basically, if someone comes up speaking any language, they can speak it into the iPad, and it will produce in the language of the other person there. So like Caroline was able to speak. Who did you speak with?
I was speaking Polish and Nada was speaking Arabic.
And it,
We were able to talk to one
yeah, and then Dodd had someone yesterday who came in and spoke Portuguese. And we were actually able to work through the registration process with them. So it just, obviously, we would much rather always have someone who speaks Portuguese there. But it's a really good thing in the moment. So it is now in all of our offices at each building, including here. And it has just been a really, really helpful tool for us.
So when Dodd was answering, it was then translating to Portuguese.
Correct, yes. And
Great.
she could have spoken in either Arabic or English and it would have still translated. And we've tested it out with some kids and they say, wow, that actually is really like spot on. Obviously, there will be some errors, but enough where you can definitely communicate and get the point across. So we were very excited with that. And also around EL, Caroline and the junior high team presented to the BPAC parent meeting, and it's really nice. The library lets us use their nice room over there. So just really great to see the resources of the community coming together for our families. Enrollment report, you'll see that we have added 9 students from last month, and we are now up 4 additional students from last year. Our vacant positions continue to pretty much be about the same. Ridge-Lawn is fully staffed for the first time this year. So we're very excited about that. And starting tomorrow, we will start posting for our positions for next year. We still have to keep up some of the positions legally for this year, but we will transfer over some of those for next year. Statement of economic interest. Lori has completed entering all of the information. She has to only give your CRSD email. She can't give any other of your emails. So just be on the lookout for that. Once we see that they start coming through, I'll send a communication out to everyone to let you know that it's there. Because again, that's the one that you have to have filled out by a certain time or you get fined. And we don't want any of you to have to pay for volunteering to be on the board. So we'll make sure we remind you of that. 4.5 is the board discussion on the school calendar. We will be asking later in the meeting to go ahead and approve that. We had 2 different drafts, calendar A and calendar B. Calendar B starting earlier. Not a surprise, that was not what our teaching staff voted for. It was pretty overwhelming, like 48 to 19 or something in favor of what we would consider here more of a regular start for us. Other than that, things were very similar. 218's calendar is in there for you as well. Spring break is very long on this calendar because we have the spring break week. And then that Monday is when we are off for Eid. And then that Tuesday is actually election day, which we have to be closed for. We had really tried to talk 218 into taking spring break that following week, so we didn't have all those days. But our families will have a very nice long time at home with their families. So also in there is some of the feedback from the teaching staff. One of the things that has been asked kind of year after year is for those Wednesday parent-teacher conferences, if we could move it to Thursday so they only have one more day left in the week. All of our other days are on Wednesday. I did not know how the board felt about that, so I'd like to have a discussion. The other part that people have asked for is to just move the half days overall. One of the suggestions was to do it on Fridays, which would normally sound okay. However, our Fridays are usually our lowest attendance days from staff, so I would not recommend that since it is usually professional development. But those were some of the comments in there. So I don't know how the board felt about that Wednesday day. I just wanted to open that up for discussion.
Right, yeah. For the parents' sake, I mean, I feel like that would be very confusing for people who might not read their emails or follow the calendar, which seems to be the majority, that it would be confusing.
You did. Does anyone else have an opinion on it?
I just think that, one of our big goals as a board is to unify us with the staff. And this is something that they've repeatedly asked about. And I get that because as a parent, I mean, I'm fortunate that my husband is able to do it, but I would think about considering it because it is only one day. And I feel like if we give enough advance notice in the understanding of it, and I think it would show some level of support to the staff. But I do understand both sides, which is why we decided last year to keep it maintained as the same.
So on these half day Wednesdays, you talk about
Mhm.
the ones that are, it's all personal development. correct?
Professional development, yeah, so-
Oh, I was talking about the
Except-
parent
so-
teacher conferences.
yeah,
I am
so-
not talking about moving it
Yeah,
to Friday.
so
That
That's what I was like.
that is not what I meant.
Yes,
I
so-
just meant the one day, guys.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's what I was, I'm like, wait, because I was
Sorry.
like.
Yeah, so all of the
I
other
wanna make
days, there is on that Wednesday, in November, I think it's Wednesday the
sure.
20th. That is the one that's
Okay.
being requested to move. So-
No, the late start in general, I agree, or
Early
early
release.
release, I feel like that it has been consistent, and I think that a lot of people probably have childcare already planned, and it has been embedded in the schedule. I don't think right now we just have enough information to switch it, and I agree with Fridays. I think that it makes it very tricky. I was interested in looking at what other districts possibly did it and see, how it's working with them. The day that I believe the switching of the parent teacher conferences, I
So
don't,
instead of having it on that Wednesday, they want to move it to the Friday, the
No,
27th.
it'd be moved to that Thursday.
of
Yeah,
February.
yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And thoughts as well.
Just that the week, since they're here much later at night, the week is almost done at that point.
and I mean, the thought of like, I had said, well, what if we move conferences on Friday, but then a lot of
Right.
people wouldn't even come on a Friday. So this has been brought up multiple times about switching the day.
Do we have to do, like, are we voting?
We should vote on the calendar today.
Okay.
Mhm.
So the parent teacher conference is on evening of Wednesday.
They're on the evening of Wednesday and then that following Monday.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
It's during the, like, the school.
Yeah, it's like a
hours.
full, I think it's like 12:30
And we're
to
opposed doing it on a
3:30.
Friday, or they just don't want to say that.
And usually you won't have parents come on a Friday night.
Yeah, especially considering it's, the week, like, they're off that week for Thanksgiving. so
Yeah.
How do we track?
Okay, is that one? Yeah.
Yeah.
So then there's parent teacher conferences on that Monday,
Correct.
so that's why.
What are the times on Monday?
I want to say it's like 12:30 to 3:30.
3:30,
It's
5:30.
5:30. We definitely get a lot of people on that Wednesday, not as many people during the day. And some people had said like, we don't want to have 2 days of conferences. I've also seen it though, where you don't have enough conferences and parents can't get any spot, and that does not work well.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we do like a Thursday evening and then Friday day conference? So Thursday evening, then a Friday during the day.
Yeah, the only thing with that is we still have to get enough school days in. So then you'd either have to go to school on that Monday after they've had a day and a half off, or then you'd have to put it somewhere else in the calendar.
I feel like I
Yeah.
talked through that idea as well, and it was like, then it would be like a teacher day on the other day, and we would lose an instruction day. So I felt like I talked through that option as well.
That is like that Friday. would be-
Friday, the
Yes,
27th.
yes, that's usually when our conference is downtown.
I don't have a problem with that.
I was gonna say if they want Thursday. then-
If we do go that route, I think we need to like really blast it out constantly. I mean, the calendar would come out next week, so people would have it, but I think we really need to point that out that that was a change. So,
But the overall consensus then for the early release on Wednesdays, I'm sorry if I miscommunicated, I did not mean
Yeah.
that. I just feel like that's much larger of an undertaking, and
Well, and those half days are truly for the staff, for professional development, and if we know collectively that Mondays and Fridays are not fully attended work days for some people, then they're missing out on good information.
so when we go to make the motion, I will make the motion that we are going with calendar A with the change. And again, I think the dates are November 20th to the 21st
Yeah.
for that day only.
Yes.
So, okay. All right. Well, thank you for that. And then 4.6, I just want to point out, obviously, there are a lot of action items later on. I think we have like 18 of them. The last 5 or 6 are all contracts to allow us to look at different things moving forward. Specifically, homeless transportation, which has become very difficult to procure and in some places absolutely ridiculous in the cost. Carrie has spent a lot of time looking at different agencies and different transportation modes, and we found a couple that we think are appropriate, both price wise and just that would offer our kids good service. So we would just want to have those approved in case we have more people who come in who need those services. And then the other one is just staffing agencies. He's continued to branch it out. We hope we never have to use any of them. But the more people he has and the more competitive we can be with the rates, that's what those are for. So I just wanted to explain that because once we get to it, hopefully we can kind of go through them rather quickly. But he has spent a lot of time really researching these. So. All right, I'm going to turn it over. I think Megan's in there somewhere for the curriculum director report.
So 5.1 summer school, at the last board meeting, I had shared just general information about summer school with the board and the community, the specific dates and times and things like that. But today, we would really be asking the board to approve the second amount. So the summer school is going to run, just a reminder, June 11th through June 28th. Staff will be here June 10th for professional development and have the option to come in on June 7th for room setup and prep and things like that. And so the stipends, which will be listed in that board approval, you'll see are for teachers, paraprofessionals, lunch hostess, parent liaison, secretaries, and the nurse. And that's really the action item that we're looking to come up in the upcoming part of the meeting. 5.2, February 16th Institute Day. It's hard to believe actually that this Friday is our last district institute day of this school year. So we're really excited to share out that we have two presenters coming in from Adler University, and they'll be speaking on two different topics, one on self-care and the other on cultural awareness. And those topics are really stemming from feedback that we've gotten from the staff last year in a survey that was sent out by Dr. Elaine Roberts. And we had talked about that last year as at a board meeting. So the staff had really shared that those were two topics that they felt we needed to provide more professional development in. And so we connected with these two presenters and we're excited to have them out. The staff will also do the third session of executive function training. So we're excited about that. And then in the last part of the day, from 11 to 1, the admin team, myself and Caroline will be presenting to the staff the topic of building collaborative teams in Chicago Ridge. As we've transitioned to team teaching and we have more staff working collaboratively together, we want to take the time and the space to give the teams that opportunity to really build a relationship within themselves. And build that trust and build that camaraderie, knowing that strong teams are actually what have the greatest impact on student learning. And so we'll take the time to do that. We have some really fun activities. I, of course, think they're fun. And so does all the admin team. And so we're excited about that and spending the time together as an entire staff. Our custodians will be a part of it. Our district office are asked to be there. Just because in all aspects of the school district, we have teams working and we want to spend the time to strengthen that moving forward. So really excited about that work ahead. And then we end the year, that's our last institute day.
Thank you, Ms. Nine. Do you have any other?
I do not.
What was my mic? Kathy.
Okay, thank you. Okay, a couple of things in the capital planning area. We did open bids for two of our projects last week in the district office. And the first one is going to be for our signage. And what we're looking to do is just kind of upgrade all our interior signage. And also do the markings on the outside windows. So for security and police department and fire department, when they're driving by, God forbid, in case of emergency, it's easily identified. And so those bids were open and we do have Corey in the audience, our architect with Studio GC, in case any of the board members want to know more specifics and more details about any of the projects. But the lowest responsive bidder for that was Construction Construction Solutions, who actually just got done with all our work over the summer. So we're happy to have them back. And that bid is $52,723. And then the second bid that we went out for is phase 2 of our lighting project. And also we have a repeat bidder, Twin Supplies, who did round 1 back in 2022. They were our lowest responsive bidder, and we will be recommending the board approve that at a contracted rate of $471,741. We actually had a bit of good news with these bids. Studio GC always projects what they think it was, and these costs are actually lower than was previously projected back in 2021. So that was a very good surprise. Other items on the agenda for approval are our classroom furniture for both Ridge Lawn and Ridge Central. We'll be working on furnishing both the second and third grade classrooms, and those amounts are going to be on your agenda. Ridge Lawn is about $149,000, and Ridge Central is about $205,000 for the same amount of classrooms. But what we have to remember is Ridge Lawn does not have those bump out areas and storage areas that Ridge Lawn does. So the classroom cost per Ridge Central is going to be a little bit higher. And Fran and Katie, we first got the original proposal and it was high. I mean, I just get amazed at how much classroom furniture is. So they cut it back as best they could, and hopefully we're going to get some good furniture, and that should definitely be in over the summer and ready for next year. And then finally, a couple more items on the agenda. Another payment to Construction Solutions for the work over the summer. So lots going on there. And it is time to approve the school fees for next year. And currently our fees are $130 for the junior high and $120 for the elementary. And we are recommending to the board that those stay status quo. We also would like to continue our early registration discounts. So for those families, paying attention and getting registered sooner than later, we do offer a $30 discount per child, which really adds up. And I do think our communities really appreciate that. And it also helps us with knowing a little bit more information about enrollment. And then this is the time of year we renew our contract with our Sunrise, our pupil transportation, for both special ed and regular education. And their original proposal was for 2 years, and it was for a 2-year extension, which is new because prior to this, we could only enter into single year contracts. And there has been a statute to revise that. So now we do have the luxury of entering a long-term contract. So they originally gave us 2 options: a 1-year contract at 10% or a 2-year contract at 8% and 7%. So what we did is we went back and countered, and what we came up with, they offered us a 2-year extension at 7% and 6%, but then they also offered us a 3-year extension at 7%, 6%, and 5%. And we have been happy with Sunrise Transportation. This was the first year they were able to fully staff our routes. So that has been running very smoothly. And I think most people know transportation is huge and we want it to work. And I know we have seen double-digit increases over the past couple of years, and I do anticipate those continuing. So I would actually be recommending to the board that we go with the 3-year extension and really take advantage of that 3rd year at 5%.
The negotiation line.
Thank you.
We really have, in talking with other districts, their bus still continue to be a nightmare, and paying more percentage increase than these are. So I get it, a really nice job negotiated. Definitely concur that 3 years is the way to go.
Hey, and then finally, just some housekeeping. Every year in January or February, we ask the board to consider changing the reimbursement rate for mileage for our staff that kind of go back and forth into workshops and things. So that is actually increasing by 1.5 cents this year to 67 cents. So we're asking that to be the reimbursed mileage. And then I do have one other. As anticipated, we did not get the 2024 property tax relief grant, which really is no surprise. We were 100 and some on the list, and I believe up to 31. Number 31 got that. But keep in mind, we didn't get it because our overall tax rate is lower compared to some of our neighboring districts, which is good news.
Question, with the
Yes.
classroom furniture, how many grades are we in through? so
Yeah,
far?
so the first year we did fifth and fourth, and this year will be second and third. And so next year we'd like to finish up the elementaries, and we really have to start looking at the junior high as well, because so far we've only given them desks. Anything else?
Kathy, how many employees travel from building to building?
Not many at all. A lot of people don't put in reimbursement. So that's a benefit, but they certainly are entitled to it. So in terms of employees other than administration, I would say probably about 4 or 5 put it in regularly. Again, more people are entitled to it, but they just don't put it in.
You have another, Kathy?
Just my property
Okay.
tax. We're good. Thank you.
New business?
8.0.
Okay, you want to just start reading them? I'll have,
Alright. All right, lots of
yes,
board action.
yes.
We need to move through potential. Go, guys. Okay, 8.1, potential board action to approve the 3-year extension with Sunrise Transportation for the 24, 25, 25, 26, 26, 27 school years for both regular and special ed.
I'll make a motion. Yep.
Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Mrs. Schroeder. Mr. Medina. Mrs. Lebudzick
Aye.
and Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye. 8.2, potential board action to approve the school fees for the 24, 25 school year. No
I'll make the
changes.
motion.
Mr. Medina. Mrs. Lebudzick,
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Mrs. Schroeder.
Aye.
Mrs. Grove
Aye.
and Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye. 8.3, potential board action to approve the change in mileage reimbursement to 67 cents per the upgraded IRS guidelines for 24. I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Mrs. Schroeder.
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Mr. Medina. Mrs. Lebudzick
Aye.
and Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye. 8.5, potential board action to approve a contract with Twin Supplies in the amount of 471,000.
I think
Yeah.
8.4.
Excuse me, a potential board action to, I was worried about that big number. Not a numbers, it's yours. Potential board action to approve a contract with Construction Solutions of Illinois in the amount of $52,723 for interior signage. I'll second.
Mrs. Lebudzick,
Aye.
Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Mrs. Schroeder, Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Mr. Medina. And Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye. Now 8.5, potential board action to approve a contract with Twin Supplies in the amount of $471,000, 741 for lighting replacement.
I'll make the
motion.
I'll second it.
Mr. Medina. Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Mrs. Schroeder.
Aye.
Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Mrs. Lebudzick
Aye.
and Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye. 8.6, potential board action to approve a purchase of classroom furniture for Ridge Central Ridge Lawn in the amount of $355,000, $464.65. I'll make the motion.
Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Mr. Medina. Mrs. Schroeder. Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Mrs. Lebudzick
Aye.
and Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye. 8.7, potential board action to approve payment to Construction Solutions of Illinois in the amount of $346,000, $525.45 for building additions and renovations work done at Ridge Lawn.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Mrs. Schroeder.
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Mrs. Lebudzick,
Aye.
Mr. Medina. Mrs. Grove
Aye.
and Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye. 8.8, potential board action to approve payment to Construction Solutions of Illinois in the amount of $599,000, $123.95 for building additions and renovation work done at Ridge Central and Finley Junior High.
I'll make a motion.
Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Mr. Medina, Mrs. Schroeder, Mrs. Lebudzick,
Aye.
and Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye. The next one we have to change.
Yes, we will be looking for a potential board action to approve the 24-25 calendar as presented in draft A with a change of the parent-teacher conferences from Wednesday, November 20th to Thursday, November 21st.
I'll make a motion.
Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Mrs. Lebudzick,
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Mr. Medina, Mrs. Schroeder, and Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye.
Yes.
8.10, potential board action to approve 3 full-time special education departments starting in the 24-25 school year.
Yes, so these are from the study session last month to work through our continuum. These are the 3 full-time positions that we are recommending adding. And if those are approved, we will post them tomorrow to start looking for staff.
I will make that motion.
I'll second.
Laura gets that one. Mr. Medina.
Aye.
Mrs. Schroeder.
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Mrs. Lebudzick,
Aye.
Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
and Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye. 8.11, potential board action to approve a full-time special education coordinator to begin in the 24-25 school year.
And that was the other position we discussed at the study session as well.
Do we have a better, idea of what they're gonna be doing?
So I had shared out the Excel sheet with, yes,
So
yep,
that is what we're going with.
yes,
Okay,
yep.
perfect. That's all we know.
Motion.
Mrs. Lebudzick,
Aye.
Mr. Medina, Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Mrs. Schroeder, and Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye. 8.12, potential board action to approve payment to Power School in the amount of $29,465.80 for renewal of the services for 24-25 school year.
Yes, and Power School is our student information system. It has all the information. It's something we need.
I'll make the motion.
Mrs. Lebudzick,
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Mrs. Schroeder,
Aye.
Mr. Medina, and Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye. 8.13, potential board action to approve an agreement with 18046 Transportation Services as an alternative vendor for McKinney-Vento and special education students.
Yeah, and 8.13 through 8.17 is exactly what I talked about before, just having these contracts in place, that if it comes up, that we can use them and not, instead of waiting a month to even be able to start looking at it, so.
I'll make a motion.
Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Mrs. Lebudzick,
Aye.
Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Mrs. Schroeder, Mr. Medina, and Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye. 8.14, potential board action to approve an agreement with Ever Driven Technologies as an alternative vendor for McKinney-Vento special education students.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Mr. Medina.
Aye.
Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Mrs. Schroeder,
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Mrs. Lebudzick,
Aye.
and Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye. 8.15, potential board action to approve an agreement with Behavioral Intervention Specialists of LA LLC for additional personnel staffing needs.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Mrs. Schroeder,
Aye.
Mrs. Lebudzick,
Aye.
Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Mr. Medina,
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
and Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye. 8.16, potential board action to approve an agreement with Schoolhouse Staffing for additional personnel staffing needs.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Mr. Medina, Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Mrs. Lebudzick,
Aye.
Mrs. Schroeder,
Aye.
and Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye. 8.17, potential board action to approve an agreement with Clarify Staffing Solutions for additional personnel staffing needs.
I'll make a motion.
Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Mr. Medina, Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Mrs. Lebudzick,
Aye.
Mrs. Schroeder,
Aye.
and Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye. 8.18 other,
I don't have any,
and then 9.0 meeting reports, no, and there's another other, which I'm assuming,
nothing.
and then 10.0 informational.
Nope.
10.1 other,
Nope.
and then we already did 11.0 opportunity for visitors to speak.
Yeah, just, we
So,
can make sure nobody else.
is there anyone who wanted to speak?
Okay.
Making sure, okay. 12.0 is president's prerogative, so I just want to apologize in advance for misspeaking earlier about the day because I misunderstood. But I know as a teacher that March and February are very long, but February is the worst. And so I give it to all the teachers for pushing through. You got Monday off and Friday. And then March we have spring break, which is always great. So I hope that everyone enjoys their little Valentine's Day celebrations if the classes have them. I think it's still great to make kids feel good about caring about each other and giving them little things. So I always really appreciate when teachers kind of work together and still do these parties, at least at the elementary school level. I had the pleasure, I coach speech for the high school I currently work at, and I was able to see our kind of high school perform their performance in the round, which is a circular play. And two former graduates from Findlay, Charlie Schultz and Tierza's daughter, are both in the performance because it's usually an underclassmen based thing. And they got second, and they are going to state.
That's great.
So those are two really great kids that we had at Findlay who are freshmen this year. And I'm sure that there's other kids who are former Findlay grads, but I knew their names.
Yeah.
I knew them because of band last year and other things. So it was really great. It just shows like what great kids are raising, that they're willing to step out and do this performance, which is very hard to do at a very hard sectional in the IHSA competition. So I love seeing them keep going and going up. So that's really all I had. I just appreciate everything that the teachers are doing, sticking through it. I know we've had some craziness and snow days and all that stuff, and it's never fun, but I do appreciate the effort that everyone is making. So that's the thing.
All right, thank you. All right, I get to read this nice little paragraph here. All right, so we're going to adjourn to closed session for the purpose of the discussion of appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. However, a meeting to consider an increase in compensation to a specific employee of a public body that is subject to the local government wage increase Transparency Act may not be closed and shall be open to the public and posted and held in accordance with this act as defined in the Open Meetings Act, Section 2C1. The discussion of collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees as described in Section 2C2. The discussion of security measures and the use of personnel and equipment to respond to an actual, a threatened, or reasonably potential danger to the safety of employees, students, the staff, the public, or public property as defined in Section 2C8. The discussion of student disciplinary cases as defined in Section 2C9, the discussion of pending or probable and imminent litigation against, affecting, or on behalf of the district as defined in Section 2C11, and the discussion of minutes of prior meetings lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act as defined in Section 2C21 for the purpose of review, approval, or release of such minutes. We are looking for a motion to go into closed session.
Motion. A second.
Mrs. Lebudzek,
Aye.
Mrs. Lammel,
Aye.
Mrs. Schroeder,
Aye.
Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Mr. Medina, and Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye.
7:09. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks
So
everyone
good
for
to see so many
coming. It's so
people.
nice.
Thank you.